Well, hello there. It's time for Star Wars Episode 6, Return of the Jedi, 2M5 Jabba's Prisoners. What's in the film, at least. Music by John Williams, orchestrated by Herb Spencer. And this one is heavily edited. The original score has much more of the Jabba stuff going on. So I imagine that some of the scene was cut or recut. And then various bits sort of move. So weirdly, oddly, in the beginning, let me just sort some stuff out. We actually have a bit from 9M3, Son Meets Father. Basically, is the bounty hunter brings Chewie in as a prisoner to Jabba's palace, and then the negotiations start, and 3PO sort of comes up and sort of starts talking. Around this tempo to Jabba, slow tempo. So let's sort of dive in. I'll come back to the orchestration later on. Some of this probably needs a little bit of tidying. I've just sort of tried to not rush through it, but I'm so behind on things at the moment that I know that you want the content, so I'm going to try and bring it to you as quickly as I can. It just takes a very long time to do. So this is the first bit of the reduction. So we've got this tracked bit from 9M3, which one of my patients was very helpful to say. The orchestra is usual triple wind, the usual, actually not the usual brass section, because we only got 4 horns, not 6 at this one, 3 trumpets, and then 3 trombones. I don't know why I put 2 there. I think it should be 3 trombones, including the bass trombone, and then 1 tuba, not 2. Timp, celeste, piano, various bits of percussion, strings. I'm not even sure whether there's any harp in this, actually. I'm not sure, which is quite... Oh, no, there is harp. It would be rare for it not to have harp. So that goes in as well. So what have we got at the beginning? Well, it's unrelated to the cue. So I'm not sure how much you can sort of read into it, but basically it's an E minor chord, but with a major 7, and actually everything is verticalized with it. So in other words, all the notes of the E minor scale, harmonic minor scale, and that just sort of flows through. We've got these sort of nice dyadic bits going on, which is quite high in relation to the flutes, which is that sort of really angular, slightly octatonic melody. Like that, but it's not really octatonic because everything else is sort of E minor. So we've got that right there, and then this really unusual chord, which is this sort of, suddenly they're here, they're revealed, which is an interesting one because although there's an E in the bass, And there's also this sort of timp stuff going on. We've also got suspended cymbal. What's interesting is that if you extrapolate all the notes, and you can actually make a B minor scale. So let's just reveal that. So we've got B. We've got the C sharp actually here. We've also got it up there. We've also got D. We've got E. So it's a sort of subset of that, basically. And then missing out a few notes. And because of the voicing of where it is, it sounds really atonal. So this is this bar 5. For some reason I've got stuff which is set up for notifications. So I'm really sorry. You might hear the odd ping. Here we go. Yeah. So it sounds really atonal, but of course there's no real hint of B as such. It's just using the, using those notes, but it's actually unrelated. So it's just that by the voicing, it feels sort of quite atonal as well, and also quite an unusual sound because we've got straight mutes in the brass as well, all the way through. So all the harmonies in the brass at this point. We've got a little bit of, actually not quite true. We've got some wind, which is blended in with it actually, but very few strings other than the bass line. And then we go into the cue proper, which although I put F sharp sort of half dim 7, it's not really, because the melody is sort of very much A minor. It's just that he's added a third as a pedal below it. So you could think of it in two different ways, really. Either as a sort of F sharp minor half dim, or possibly even as an A minor, but just happens to have an F in the bass. And those sorts of additions of thirds seem to be something that he does quite a lot in this particular cue, which is interesting. So we've got this sort of rather romantic sort of melody coming here, which again is a sort of unrelated to anything else that we've really heard before, because it's a new character. There's also quite a lot of separation of sound. We've got all the melody in the strings, but none anywhere else. We've got all the harmony in the wind, but nowhere else. We've got the bass line just in the strings. So it's only the strings that sort of have melody and bass, but they don't have any of the harmony as such, in terms of the middle bits of the harmony, which is here. So I find that quite interesting. Again, a sort of indication of this sort of, American, Russian school, that French school sort of, much more separation of colour, which adds a lot of clarity to things. And then we're straight into Jabba's theme, which is this wonderful sort of tuba, crazy sort of bit. Originally there was an E-flat clarinet over the top, but it perhaps interfered with the dialogue. It's quite hard to hear on the actual film because we don't really hear this bass line particularly. But it's a very exotic sound, and it's sort of really quite interesting. And I would urge you to go to Frank Lehman's catalogue, which is this sort of grotesque leitmotif for Crime Lord Jabba, simultaneously pompous, threatening, and comical, more than almost any other theme connected with a single instrument, usually solo tuba. That's right. Although there are other things that actually take over from the tuba, like the cor anglais, for example. And then the features fast surface activity, so triplet pickup, that means this bit here, tumbling arpeggios, and slow harmonic rhythm, melodic outline of dissonant chords, so here G minor major 7 with a sharp 11, progression based on chromatic transformations, 3 minor thirds, which is absolutely true. I've also sort of speculated that it's rather tail-shaped. In other words, the actual outline of the melody, if you do that, is almost sort of Jabba the Hutt is here. That's his sort of head and mouth, and that's his tail. And I wonder whether, it's just pure speculation, but I just wonder whether that was something that influenced Williams, because I know he uses sort of physical features quite a lot to get ideas, to generate the musical ideas in the first place. I'm just sort of thinking of that, the Millennium Falcon as it sort of dives sort of down, then up, and then goes into this asteroid in the asteroid field cue from Empire Strikes Back. That sort of, this sort of twirly-whirly type sort of thing. So I find that quite interesting. And yeah, they're all sort of minor chords with major sevenths with this sort of sharp 11. In fact, there's actually an add 13 on there as well. But actually, in its entirety, then the E, can't play it. We've actually got a D major 9 with a sharp 5, but actually it's that's basically what it is. So we've got sort of G minor chord, and then we've also got that C sharp and E, which is the other bits to go along with it. And then it sort of relaxes on the C sharp minor. So that continues, it just repeats, but then it goes into F minor, and then goes into C sharp minor. So it's a sort of quite an interesting sort of juxtaposition, going down. What is it? Sort of diminished third, basically. Diminished fourth. Yeah, interesting. And then we're into like that. So we got that C sharp minor with a sharp 4. And then it goes into A flat minor with a major 7. Sort of quite familiar sort of chord extensions that he uses. So that whole little passage goes from C sharp minor to A flat minor to G minor to F sharp minor. So it's this sort of chromatic descending bass pattern. And then a sort of subsidiary bit like that with our G minor sharp 4, with our little offbeat bass, which is very, very typical, and just a little delayed root at that point as well, like that. Another sort of block chord and minor triad planing, which is where C3PO is knocked over. So it's sort of a comical knocked over. He's not fully damaged or anything. Like that. And then almost imperceptible, you can't really hear that. We actually then go into those sort of minor chords at that point, A minor going to A flat minor, just point of imitation. And then the tuba takes over again with a theme. I'll just put that in there. At that point, back to where it started, G minor major 7. Then, at this point, the negotiations are not going well, and the mighty Jabba asks why he must pay 50,000. That's my terrible C3PO impression. We got this sort of chromatic melodic fragment, which descends into down into that B minor chord. So not adding just a third, but adding 2/3 onto that last note, which very discordant, sort of B minor, and then C and then E. Oh, so that's 2 minor ninths. Very, very discordant. And then we're into a really interesting chord here, which sounds almost like a sort of atonal chord, but it's not, in fact. So if we have a look at these sort of dyads, so we have a sort of little bit of a 3/3 going on. Which is that sort of D, F natural, which is from there. The F sharp there, the D is there. And then another note as well. So in fact, we actually have an F sharp major 7 with a sharp 5. which is our sort of James Bond chord, basically. But because of the voicing, it sounds really interesting and quite sort of threatening as well. And it has this sort of quite big crescendo, actually, which goes up into probably a fortissimo, actually. So let's just put that in. That's that bit, but then the tuba starts up again. Little dart side bass going down a third as well. I put this bit sort of sounds a little bit only because of the voicing and separation. And then we've got we're into sort of more things, and this is the point of the thermal detonator reveal. And he goes, ha 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 ha, very inventive, and I like scum like you, sort of thing. And more tertial shifts. That sort of idea, that sort of chord progression. And then as we go into that, we've actually got another 3/3, like that, which is another 3/3, but not the same one. It's a slightly different variation where you have a minor third, a major third, and a minor third, but the opposite way round, an inverted one. And then we start adding notes, so adding thirds to it, adding that F, which is here, and then adding below the B flat a G as well, which takes us to a G7 with a sharp 9, in fact, but it doesn't sound like that, again, because of the voicing. And then once everything happens, he agrees, we've got this sort of little cheeky bit right at the end, which is that G major with a B major triad just right at the end. Little flutes with Celeste as well. So that is the cue, in fact. Not massively long one, but an interesting one nonetheless. And actually it's been cut a lot shorter than the original. So this is, what, 47 bars. I think I have probably got the original somewhere. So just in terms of the full score, if I can find it, that is. So I'm just looking on my drive. Where are we? 2M5. So yes, I think I did a sort of an original version, which is this one. So that's 61 bars long. So actually there's quite a few bars that have been sort of cut off. It actually started here. Then it comes into the cue. Now we have the familiar bit. Now we can hear what was taken out. Could be that it interfered with the voice. And this is actually very, very melodic. For dialogue, it is dubbed very, very low in the film. So all familiar bits. And I think Yeah, the last bit is identical. Yeah, and the last bit is absolutely identical to what we know in the finished product, the finished film. So, yeah, in terms of orchestration, I mean, there are certain little bits which I think are sort of interesting. I don't think I need to go through absolutely everything. So the usual, you know, cello with bass in octaves. That's one note. And then we've got sort of bits of harmony here in the brass. And that's accentuated by the fact that we've also got wind that, well, double it. So the only one, this sort of flute-like E up here, basically it can't do anything else because the flute's already been used, so they weren't playing at that point. But that's why that's at the top. So we've got a sort of interesting bit. So you've got clarinets, then you've got oboes. And those oboes are just doubling what the trumpets are doing. Nothing else is doubling those. And interesting, we've got all horns on the middle note of that D as well, which is interesting. So we've actually got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players just on D, and very little on others as well. And interesting, that is a minor seventh, in fact, above that E as well. So anyway, I'm not sure what that means particularly, but there it is. Then we've got the melody just in separation, as I said before, this entire separation. Yeah, and it's interesting as boom, it just changes harmony very subtly at that point. Yeah, from an A minor to this chord here, which I think, not quite sure what that was now. Let's go back, bar 10. Sort of, yeah, F minor major 7 with a F sharp in the bass. So it does change somewhat. And then we got the sort of really exotic sort of orchestration here with bassoon as well in this sort of little bit. Instead of tuba. So I think originally it was tuba, but in this case it's bassoon. Two piccolos. So what's going on in the strings? Well, we've got this sort of cold legno bit and then pizzicato. Can't really hear it. And then we've got this sort of very strange, sort of very thin sound. Terrible samples on there. Doesn't really do it justice at all, does it? Then we've got interesting sort of harmony here in the bassoon and contrabassoon. I don't think anybody else is playing that. I guess the contrabass, double bass, is sort of playing the bass line, giving it a bit of impulse. Yeah, absolutely classic voicing as well. Root, fifth, third, and then it sort of resolves into a close position triad. Like that, which is lovely. You get that sort of really nice leap up there as well, which is fantastic. Really, really well done. And then the tuba takes over at that point. These little sort of filigree interjections, which are quite fun, sort of solo passages. Then we've just got block chordal stuff with 3 flutes, with a little bit of accentuation on the celeste, on the last 2 beats. Here. Yeah, and then real separation as well. This is an interesting one where we've actually got the horns doubling up what the trombones are doing at that point. So I was just looking to see whether there's anything else joining in. There wasn't, but I will put the bassoons in and the bass clarinet. Bassoons join. Tuba joins. Like that. And it's just a gradual thickening of texture. And then we get this sort of big reveal. So I'm going to take it from here. In fact, no, I'm going to take it from here, this B minor chord. Yeah. And interesting enough, we've got this sort of snare drum and bass drum, which adds a lot of power, and the timpani as well, where we have this this bit here. We've also got that triplet going on and elsewhere in the bass. So what we got there, bass clarinet, bob, 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 and also in the snare. So it's all bass stuff. Like that, which is rather nice. Let's add the... Whoops. Go away. Ah! So let's add other reinforcement. It's quite nice sort of being able to sort of pick up these different things. So more harmony. Not any of the top line. Yeah, so interestingly, actually, that trumpet's quite a long degree away from the top note of that one. Which allows the space of the horns to sort of be filled in. And then we've also got a little bit of sort of wind as well. Just filling in a bit of the harmony. Yeah, very effective sort of voicing here. Sort of all around the middle C area. Like that. And that's sort of about it, really. We've just got sort of, you know, basic sort of triadic work a little bit later on. And that's kind of it, really. Lots of sort of trills and things. Interesting just looking at the strings as to what they actually play. You know, a lot of it, they've got a little bit of melody there. Then it's all harmonics. A bit of pizzicato, then tremolo, harmonics, trills. You know, it's interesting because you associate violins with sort of, you know, thematic material all the time. They don't have it in this particular cue. So I find that also interesting, sort of looking at the individual parts to see what role they play in the orchestra, which I think can be quite an interesting observation and study just of itself. So that's kind of it. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will move on to the next one as soon as possible. Bye for now.